I know he's here. Okay. Mr. Ladd?
Mr. Ladd is on an airplane and cannot participate and sends his apologies.
Okay. Mr. Marshall? Ms. Orostro?
Yes, here.
Mr. Partington?
Yeah.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Walters? I know he's there too. Mr. Zeltman?
Here.
And Chair Mamano?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Walters is here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for being present. I know it's been a long time since we've gotten together, but as you know, this is a new board. We are now the Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. The ITF actually expired on March 7th, 2020. And so this is a new board. Some of you had questions why you didn't have minutes. That's why there's no minutes, because this is a new board. The resolution for this new board was adopted on February the 18th. And it expands the purpose and duties of this board, as well as the membership, which went from 9 to 11. So there is extension of the terms, which will expire on 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, February 18, 2022. And there's a term of 2 years. So we want to go through and I believe go ahead and do the general discussion and comments. General discussion and comments of the committee members on the added role and defined by city resolution. Did everyone get an opportunity to review the new resolution with the roles and responsibilities?
Yes.
Yes.
And so the roles and responsibilities are primarily the same as they were before, with the addition of the providing recommendations on the feasibility and impact of implementing a moratorium on the acceptance of application for issuance of development permit within the city. Everything else that was a part of the old ITF with regards to city infrastructure, roads, sidewalks and such, repair and replacement, as well as looking at the funding of those sources for those particular infrastructure needs. All of those things remain the same. So with that, I will go ahead and give it to the, we can go ahead and do the new business for the election of the chair and vice chair. Yes, Jacqueline?
I guess we can do that first. I also wanted to talk in general discussion. I wanted to talk about our meeting times and how we meet.
I figured that once the chair is elected, they can take over that conversation as about the time and what the date of the meeting will be and such.
Well, prior to us expiring, we had Marilyn Mamano as our chair and we had Peter Partington as our vice chair. I think they both did a great job, and I would like to go ahead and nominate both of them, or start with Marilyn as chairman.
I second that.
I'd be honored to accept.
We'll take a vote.
Election of both of them.
To vote.
Would you like a roll call?
Yes, please.
Mr. Angeli?
Yes.
Mr. Grabsky?
Yes.
Mr. Ostro?
Yes.
Mr. Partington?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Zeltman?
Yes.
And Ms. Mamano?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Excellent.
Jackie?
Do I need to nominate Peter? I guess I need to nominate him separately. I nominate Peter for vice chair.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Angeli?
Yes.
Mr. Grabsky?
Yes.
Mr. Ostro?
Yes.
Mr. Partington?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Zeltman?
Yes.
And Chair Mamano?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Excellent. Chairman Mamadou, I will defer over to you so that we can now get started with talking about if you want to have further discussion about the duties, roles, and responsibilities, as well as the housekeeping of the date of your meeting, the time of your meeting, and so forth.
I would suggest that we do the housekeeping. Our meeting schedule was the first Monday of the month from 2 to 5 o'clock. It worked well at the time, but times have changed, and I open it up for discussion if anyone wants to make suggestions for changing that. Jackie?
Yeah, I was looking at,
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
yeah, I was looking at that, and I'm looking at our expanded roles. And I think it's so very important for the public to be able to participate. 2 o'clock in the afternoon just doesn't lend itself to people in business, people that are working, et cetera. So I would like to find out if we could change the meeting time to a 6 o'clock meeting, and what night we could do that the room is free. Or we're going to be on Zoom, so it probably doesn't matter at this point. But I feel strongly we need to make it much more transparent and much more convenient for the public.
Okay, before we have any more discussion on this, I do want to recognize Michael Marshall and Shane Michael, you were with us for the last few meetings of the last committee, so you're not the new guy on the block. Shane's the new guy, so I'd like to welcome Shane to our group. And Shane, do you want to say a few words about how you came to be on this committee?
Sure.
Or anything you want to say?
Yeah. My name's Shane Grabsky. I'm a civil engineer. I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, so being part of this committee means a lot to me. And I feel that I have a very good understanding of the infrastructure in the city, given my background as an engineer. And I hope I can bring a lot to the table and do my part.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And for the record, Michael Marshall has joined us for the roll call. Okay, so what do people think about Jackie's suggestion?
I think I agree with that. The only thing is, I know that, well, City Hall, which doesn't matter so much at the moment, but also there are a lot of meetings related to City in the evening. So the question revolves around the ability of staff to squeeze in or put in another meeting initially by Zoom.
So perhaps we should
comment. I spoke with the clerk's office, and so one of the things to keep in mind, though while we are doing Zoom, you can pick whichever meeting time you would like, but once we go back to face-to-face, there may be an issue with keeping that time if there's another meeting in the room at that time space.
Does anyone disagree with the importance of making sure that we make this convenient for the public as well?
I don't disagree with that point, but I think we gain more benefit from having the staff there and not having to burden them. And I think we have more benefit in that. And I think that for the 3 years that I was there, the 2 to 5 on the first Monday was, and we had enough people the first segment of time to participate. So I'd still like to stay the same way at 2 to 5 on Monday.
I think, Norm, it's good for us. But again, I feel so strongly about making sure that the public gets to participate. And I don't know, I mean, I joined the board, a year or so after you started, but very few to no people come. So I think it's the time.
No, but the first times that we had it, we had a lot of people there. It was swayed down. But when we first started, we had a number of people come to the meetings.
If I could also chime in on that, well, I'm very much in favor of, as much public participation as possible. I think that we'll actually get more participation now that it's a Zoom meeting than it was as an in-person meeting. I think people will be able to just stay at home and not have to drive back and forth to the City Hall. And I think we might, in fact, get more people on a Zoom meeting even at this time. I agree that the logistics would be a nightmare if we changed the time and then had to go back. So I guess I would be voting in terms of at least keeping us the same till we finish with the Zoom meetings, keeping us at the same time. I think I would go with keeping us the same. That would be my thought. Although I appreciate the public participation sentiment, I think that can be done in other ways by getting out more information to the public, to which I want to thank Pauline for sending out that notice to, I think, 104 Civic Association presidents and other people, letting them know that this meeting was happening. And let's see how it goes with how people will participate via Zoom, my thinking anyway. So I guess the general majority feeling is that we keep going at our regular time, a day and time? Or do we want to vote on it? You want to vote on it, or you just want to, you want to vote on it, Jackie? Okay, make a motion, please.
Oh, okay, I move that we change the meeting time to 6 PM to allow the public and more people to be able to listen and participate.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, well, we've had some discussion. Is there anybody else who wants to chime in on the discussion?
Well, I would just like to say, I'm going to vote no and see how it works. Marilyn, you could be right that people find Zoom more convenient, but I'm open to revisiting this because in principle, I think I agree with Jackie.
Well, that being the case, if there is no more discussion, shall we call call for a vote? All those in favor of changing the meeting to 6 o'clock, please signify by raising your hands. Okay, all those who want to keep the same time and date, please raise your hands. Will that work in terms of record keeping for the record, Anisha, or do we have to actually have a voice vote? We can't hear you, darling.
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair.
I know that they're recording it, so she may want to call the record so that she can have it on record prototype.
All right, then all those people who are in favor of changing the time to 6 o'clock, will I call a roll in this case? Do I call a roll or will Pauline call the roll?
I'll call the roll.
Go ahead.
Mr. Angeli?
Could you come back to Mr. Angeli?
Okay. Mr. Grabsky?
No.
Mr. Marshall?
No.
Mr. Ostrow?
No,
Mr. Partington?
No,
Ms. Scott?
Yes,
Mr. Walters?
No.
Mr. Zeltman?
No.
Mr. Angeli, are you there?
Here.
Are you voting yes or no?
I apologize. I had to step away for a minute. What was the question?
To change the meeting time to 6 PM?
No.
Okay. And Chair Mamano?
No.
Okay.
All right, well, we don't have to do anything more than that. The motion fails. All righty, getting back to the agenda. Does anybody want to have some more discussion about the change, or I wouldn't call it the change, the addition to our mandate vis-a-vis the new resolution? Norman, your hand is up.
when we left and when we had the resolution, it provided for the moratorium. I asked that we get a memo from legal as to the legal effects of a moratorium, the legal procedures for a moratorium. I'm sure we didn't get that, so I'd like to reiterate that and ask for a legal opinion as to what we can do vis-a-vis a moratorium.
Okay. You want a legal opinion as to whether a moratorium is legal or the consequences of a moratorium?
No, not the consequences, what the procedure and what the requirements for a moratorium would be, the legal requirements.
Okay. because we all understand and know that a moratorium is a legal tool that could be used, but you want more specificity on what the process would be?
Yes.
Okay. How about that
And
for
the
everyone?
requirements for what the legal requirements that we would have to meet to have a moratorium.
Right. The backup material. What would we need to back up our recommendation for a moratorium?
Correct.
Okay. Yes. Peter?
I agree with that. And it seems like in another life now, when we knew that this was on the horizon, I sent somebody, there was a moratorium, a partial moratorium, 20 years ago on the beach for a limited period of time, less than a year. And there was a reso that enabled that, I guess. And I think I sent somebody a copy of that or a link to that. So that's one thing I can look at and send again. It speaks to how you bring it into force.
Right, I remember that, Peter, and I also remember that there was a moratorium on marijuana facilities. Not too long ago at all. There was a moratorium of, I think it was about 6 months or a year, so that no more marijuana stores could open in the city until we passed a resolution. So perhaps in addition to what Norman is asking for, we could get some historical perspective, instances of when the city has in fact implemented a moratorium for anything, marijuana shops, so whatever they were, whatever the subject matter was, so that we could have some historical context. Jackie?
Didn't we have a moratorium on PUDs?
I think you're right.
Yeah, we did, because I know Mary and I were the kingpins in that, trying to get that stopped and get the rules changed, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so that's 3 recent ones. Okay. How would we go about doing that, Anisha? Is that a communication to the commission, or is that just a request for the staff?
You can submit it. It's a request to the staff at this point. I will check with the clerk to find out if I need to just go straight to the attorneys or not. I'm not 100% sure, but I have written it down as something that I need to follow up on.
Okay, so then could we put that on the agenda for the next meeting, a follow-up on that? Okay, Norman?
Okay.
Okie dokie. All right. We haven't met in a long time, and a lot of, oh, I'm sorry, Peter, I see you.
So on this moratorium subject, I'm kind of fascinated, interested by, in recent months, the completely different pattern of occupation of buildings, particularly downtown. And that obviously affects the wastewater flows. So I'm thinking that when we get deeper into this subject, I would like to have information on how the monthly flows have varied from average during the term of the lockdown and then the partial lifting of the lockdown, etc. So we can kind of see what the flows look like when there's almost nobody in downtown, if that's a fair assumption. So again, that's a staff research thing. It may take a while to pull that together, but I think that's relevant information because we almost have a case study of what happens when you have a significant portion of the city not occupied during the daytime.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent point, Peter. Along those same lines, what's the current status of the community thought? Because the whole topic of moratorium came up when the pipes were blowing. And the cause and effect was there shouldn't be any more building. There shouldn't be any more increases in occupancy or flows, to Peter's point, from downtown until such time that the city got a little bit more robust pipes and systems in place to handle it. Where are we now?
Well, I think that that it has calmed down tremendously, and I think calm down is the wrong word. I think attention is focused elsewhere. I really don't think that people are focusing on this issue at this moment, given the circumstances. I think what I've been hearing from my people, civic associations and others, is that the issue of waterway, of the waterways and how impacted the waterways were, and how we're going to have waterway cleanup relative to the previous breaks, sort of elevated itself to, let's say, the top of the list of community concerns. But again, that's only from the perspective of people I hear from, and I don't hear from everybody. So I'm just putting that information in as a sort of my perception of what is the top priority issue that I'm hearing on the street is water quality, not moratorium at this point. My input. I don't know what everybody else is hearing. Michael,
I'm
Jerry,
hearing-
anybody?
I'm hearing the same thing. People are talking about the waterways and talking about additional testing, talking about elevate. You know, I think there's a certain number you have to meet to pass the state's regulation, but who knows what that number really is as it relates to your water quality. It's acceptable. And I think people are talking about wanting to be more than acceptable.
Peter?
I would like to get, if he's on, Raj's input on this. I think we should be careful about cause and effect. You could say that, you know, since Raj arrived, no pipes or very few have broken. So it's all down to Raj. So congratulations, Raj. But can we, Raj, if you're on.
Lucky Raj.
Peter, if I could, we're going to provide a public works update, and I have several items that I'm going to provide some information on. I know on your agenda is a one-liner, but there's a myriad of different things that are here, which is why you have several subject matter experts that are on this particular virtual meeting.
Anisha, can I follow up on that? You had sent us a number of documents to review
Yes.
for this meeting. One of them was the consent order vis-a-vis water quality for water. And one was the report 2020, July 2020 on the consent order progress. Okay, those were the two documents you sent us. I'm aware of other documents that were not sent to us, one of which was additional projects required vis-a-vis the updated consent order.
Right.
So at least let's get our baseline. I think you're absolutely right. Let's start with the documents that you sent us, making sure that everybody has those documents, and making sure that we get up to speed on what's happened since the last time we met. A lot has happened. So I agree with you. Can we, as soon as we get Peter's question, can we get the staff going on bringing us up to date vis-a-vis the report, the July report on the consent order? Yes, Peter.
I was also puzzled by that. And then I saw in the first half of the year consent order report done by Hazen, there is reference to additional projects having been generated as a result of the condition report, which was an earlier stage of the consent order projects. But anyway, I agree with your request for information on that, Meredith.
Okay, so let's get started then.
All right, well, first things I want to mention, for anyone that don't know, Pauline Ricketts, who is on the line, she is the administrator for the Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. And so she will be the one that you will communicate with, who's been sending you documents and making sure that you have what you need. I'll serve as your liaison for this meeting. So I'll be the one that will be interacting with you on these meetings and making sure that I provide you follow-up and get you all the information that you need. We recognize the importance of this meeting, and we know that, like you stated, a lot of time has gone by. So I did want to make sure that we provided a pretty comprehensive update about a myriad of different topics. I'll start with infrastructure update because, I mean, that is a big one, but it encompasses a lot of the different projects. As you guys know, we have quite a few active projects, infrastructure projects in various stages: plan, design, bidding, and construction. And we do have a document that is sent out by Structural Communications. It's called the Lauder Track Infrastructure Newsletter, and it's updated quarterly, and it goes out, and it provides a status on all of our projects with the most critical projects that are underway. So I asked if you can take a look at that. You can go to fortlauderdale.gov/LauderWorks, and you can actually always take a look at that, and you'll see quite a bit of our projects with a statement on the updated status of that report that comes up. Yes, Peter?
That's fine, but the chair's point is that that consent order has changed within the last, I don't know, 9 months or something.
Not
5
even.
projects have been brought in, and I'm not sure that Lauder Track spells out, by the way, these projects have been added within the last year.
Right. So let me do this so that you guys kind of have an idea of what I'm going to make sure we're going to cover, so that help. I'm going to go through the infrastructure update, which would include the redundant project status update. Also talk about 5-ash, like the 5-ash plant project. Also talk about some of the sewer breaks that we've been having. We'll talk about the water consent order, and we'll also talk about the amended wastewater consent order. And included in the both of those projects, we'll talk about those FDP fines that were included. So that is what I plan to talk about. I'm sorry, lastly is the water quality. So we have Dr. Gassman on, we have Abby, who is our AD over utilities on. Of course, as you guys know, we have Raj on. And so I'll provide some information on each of these topics, and then I'll pass it over to the subject matter experts to provide a little bit more in-depth information on them. And then we'll take questions before we go to the next subtopic. Does that work for you, Chairman Mamano?
Yeah, it works for me, but could I make a suggestion? And I don't want to change your flow there, okay? But at some point, could you bring up on the screen the 2020 semi-annual report on the wastewater consent program? Because that tells us what has happened largely since we met the last time. A lot of the pieces of the original consent order, like the studies that were done for capacity, were completed and were delivered to DEP, to Florida Department of Environmental, but we haven't seen them. So in other words, there was one very important one, which was the capacity analysis, which was submitted, but we haven't seen it. And if we're going to be talking about the capacity of the system, that's a very important piece. So if that was part of what you were going to do, go to it. Go right to it.
I will. So
Okay.
let me go ahead and start. I'll say, Omar, I want you to get teed up because you're going to be coming on talking about the infrastructure update. So again, I'll mention that if you guys want to see, the most recent publication was released in August. Omar's going to come on and talk about the redundant project status update, which is that Rio Vista 54-inch sports main replacement. As many of you know, that project is a large $65 million project that was actually issued out to two contractors, which is Murphy and Mancini, DMSI, and it's to install a 7.5 mile wastewater transmission line, which is going from Bayview Drive to GTL. This project is actually expected to be completed in 18 months. And as I mentioned, Omar, I come on and talk to you about the status of that project. But once that new line is in place, we'll have a second project that's going to come in to rehabilitate the existing 54-inch line. And then that would allow the system to have full redundancy and reliability. So Omar, if you can come on and talk about some of those particular projects, talk about 5-ash as well, and then go straight into the wastewater, the consent order, or if we can talk about that semi-annual report. Pauline, if I can ask, if you, once Omar gets ready, can you pull that up and share the screen on the consent order semi-annual report? Do you have the ability to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, hold on.
I'll pull it up, Omar. You can go ahead and talk.
You're gonna pull it up? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, pull it up so I can.
Omar, if you can go ahead and talk about the critical projects that you and I discussed, and then talk about the status of the redundant project first, and then we'll go straight into the wastewater consent order.
Okay, so the redundant line, we started the project back in January. As Anisha said, it's gonna change. We're gonna add 7.5 miles of pipe. That's the total project. To date, we have completed about 32% of that project. We have installed about 12,700 feet. 6,600 feet are in construction right now. In a few months, we'll achieve about 50% of that completion of the project. And the completion date for the whole project will be around June of 2021. We're doing everything we can to get it sooner than that, but it's a very complex project and it's going well. There is no issues at this point. And so that's pretty much the recap on that project.
Omar, if I may ask a question.
Sure.
With the redundant line and of course, once the redundant line has been completed, then you go back to the existing 48-inch line and I guess reline that so that you will in fact have at the finished product will be 2 force mains. My question is to make sure that you have critical interconnections with those 2 pipes so that should there be a future failure, you would be able to redirect from one to the other without exceeding their capacity limits, of course. But just to give a greater versatility so that if one line goes down, it's not totally down. It'll be able to redirect some, if not all, of the flow to the other line of force main.
Yeah, Ralph, that's a great point, and we're doing that. We put in connections in every critical point. So if there is a break in the actual new pipe, we can also use the old pipe to redirect that flow. So all that is taken into account through the whole pipeline, and that's what makes this project complex. But we're gonna do that, and that's the plan. So yeah, that will happen.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions for the redundant line?
I just want to say from my own personal experience in Harbordale, where that line has come all the way through, is that the contractor who's doing the southern portion, Mancini and Sons, they've been doing an excellent job. They've been working very well with the community. I think people are practically want to adopt David Mancini because he's such a sweetheart. And they've been doing a great job, and good on you for picking them.
That is so great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a daily interaction between us and Krishan, the project manager, through Mancini and Murphy. So it's a lot of work, but like I said, we'll get there, and we'll be successful, and we'll get it done on time. So that's the plan.
Hey, Omar, before we go in this, I know that there was a few other critical projects that you wanted to touch on, and maybe about 2 or 3 others. Could you touch on those?
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple more that are high-profile projects, like the Victoria Park water main improvements. We had 2 phases on that project. Phase A has been completed. I'm sorry, Phase B, which it was 26,500 feet. And we're in Phase A right now, which is about 29,000 linear feet of pipe. And that should be completed in January 2021. And it's hopefully, we're gonna get it done ahead of schedule, but the final date for completion is January 2021. That's a very large project, and it's I said also complicated project because it goes through every street on that neighborhood. So we have to coordinate with all the residents about when work is going to happen. So we have doing a lot of PIO and just informing in the next week or so when the
Sorry,
work.
Omar, second, I'm sorry. There's a lot of feedback coming off of someone's mic. I'm not sure if it's one of our board members or someone else. I'm trying to look to identify who it may be. There's a 954761. Please mute your mic.
That's Mr. Roosevelt. I went ahead and muted him.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
Okay. Another project that is very similar to that is the Bermuda Riviera water main. That project is about 98% completed, and that's another 25,000 linear feet of water main. So that one is pretty much done, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. We're gonna have final completion in August of this month, so it should be everything done by the end of this month. So those two water mains are very large, important projects, and they're almost done. So anybody has any questions about those two? Okay, another one I want to mention real quick. When we had all the breaks in December or last year, we decided to change that pipe that had all those breaks. And Mancini got that pipe under that bridge, and we completed that about a month ago. That took about 4 months to be done. We had the bike pipe that was on that bridge. We took all that out. We're almost done with all the restoration. That was a very successful project. Mancini did a great job. Project managers in the city did a great job. I think everybody's happy there. It's a brand new pipe. And we filled the pipe that broke under that river. So that should not cause any kind of problems on the soil. So that project was completed on time. And if we have a break there, we're ready, okay? Any questions on that one?
Peter, are you asking a question?
I was muted. I'm unmute. Omar, the North Force Main project, what's the status of the extent of completion of that?
That one is probably, I would say, I will have to ask the Christian the exact percentage of that one. Christian, are you online? Can you give us a percentage on the north part?
Yes, I'm here. The north part is a total of, I haven't have calculated for the north part, but the entire project is approximately, as Omar said, 32% complete.
So is it going to be completed, the whole thing, much after the south end, so that we have those, those two lengths, north and south, have been major problems? I hope the north end is not going to be completed significantly after the south end. That's basically the question.
No, Peter, they're both supposed to be completed by June of next year. We don't know yet which one will be sooner than the other, but they will be ready for June to be put online.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Oh, yes. Who is handling these 5 additional projects that we've been talking about? How are they being administered and fitted in to the schedule? who is doing that? Is that city staff or Hazen or some combination?
Which other projects for the?
These are the projects, the 5 projects that were added.
He's talking about the consent order, the
Consent order.
my annual report. Pauline, can you pull this on my annual report back up, please?
So do you want me, Anisha, do you want me to talk about the next project? You want to talk about this one first? You want me to talk about the reliability improvements of 5-ash? You want to do that next, or you want to talk about this now?
I would.
Could I suggest that we hold 5-ash until we get past wastewater? And
That's-
do,
Or in water.
Sure.
this is wastewater.
So my question again is, and I researched it a bit because of what was sent to all the members in the way of an email from a resident. And the 5 additional projects have been added to the false main projects have been added to the consent order as a result of a condition analysis that was an earlier part of the consent order. And my question is, that is additional work. So somebody has to design, etc. Is that city staff, Hazen, or is it some combination?
Omar, are you familiar with the projects he's talking about? He's talking about the
I am, and it's not official yet that we're gonna do those 5 projects. That's what we suggested to FDEP. I don't know if Raj had any later information on that.
Peter,
Go ahead.
That it may sound that we are kind of veering off your major questions, so I can probably do it 2 ways. Either we can let the staff give you a very quick short overview of what they have on the agenda, and then I come back, Peter, to your questions that initially you asked about the amended consent order, how it relates to the water quality and the impact on those several projects that have been the offshoot or the result of the condition assessment report that we submitted. So what is the pleasure of the?
No, Raj, I'm fine with that. Let's do it your way, yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So, and I'll come back and I'll wrap up everything in the sense that how things have kind of come together, and hopefully I'll be able to piece together after the staff has done the presentation. Okay, Anisha, Omar, you guys can go with whatever.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Omar, would you like to finish your presentation, or was there any other projects before we go to something else?
No, the only thing left I had is the water plant, but we can talk about that later.
Can I ask a question? The 2020 semi-annual report. I believe that we are pretty much on track and perhaps ahead of track to finish all of the projects that were initially proposed in the original consent order. Did I read that report correctly, that we're pretty much on track to get everything done on time?
Maryland, yeah, that is correct. We're on track for every single project. We have not missed a milestone to this point, and we won't miss a milestone. But yeah, we're on track. And
okay,
yeah.
Two of the work products in the original consent order was the asset management program. And I don't remember exactly what they called it, but it had to do with the capacity flow report. Have those both been submitted to the state for their approval? It should be in the actual report itself.
That is going to be submitted to the state probably in the next couple of weeks. That's the one that you're talking. You said the capacity report?
Yeah, there's 2 of them. What was it?
Go ahead.
Omar, she's referring to AM asset management and CMOM. So I think
CMOM, yeah, that's what they call it, something CMOM like that. And those are 2 very important planning pieces of the original consent order so that we could get a handle on the entire system's capacity and condition. And they were due, I think they're due. Raj, have they been finished? Can we see them? What does it say?
Marilyn, to be truthful, I do not know the answer. I will look into it and maybe I'll transmit that to all the board members to see where exactly it is. So I apologize, I don't have the answer.
Okay, well, okay, I'd love to see it because it was an important piece of the original consent order. And now we have to get on to the amended consent order. I want to make sure we finished all the work in the consent order before we, no, well, not before, but as we go on to anything additional.
Sure.
Want to make sure. Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me just ask my staff, anyone on the team, does anyone have any idea where the CMOM, status of the CMOM report is? Just
Raj,
don't-
I was gonna ask Omar to reach out to Viviana, since
Yes.
she is the senior that's leading that project, to get a status update before this meeting actually concludes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, Chairman, to answer your other question.
Anisha, this is Nancy.
Dr. Gassman, please go ahead.
I do have an update on the CMOM program. The city completed its sanitary sewer collection system assessment management and capacity management operations and maintenance program, which was submitted to FDP in June of 2020. The city's CMOM focuses primarily on activities that involve day-to-day operations and maintenance of the collection system to prevent sewer spills, whereas the asset management portion is more capital focused and addresses the overall risk of assessment failure, of asset failure and capital planning to manage the life cycles of assets. The city is currently addressing comments received from FDEP and expects to start the recommended implementation phase once the final AM-CMOM is accepted by the department. In general, implementation of the sewer AM-CMOM program will require assignment of tasks to specific individuals along with schedules for implementation, including intermediate milestones. As part of that process, additional detail will need to be developed concerning standard procedures for achieving specific goals and outcomes, as well as review processes and controls to ensure conditions are being established to promote continuous improvement. And that was an updated provided by Viviana on this morning at, one second. That was provided by Viviana on Friday, August 7th on that.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry, go ahead. Hey, Pauline, I was going to ask you to go to page 7 of that document that you have on the screen because it has all the dates that Nancy was just talking about.
I was pretty sure I saw it there. Yeah. Page 7, did you say?
Page 7, yes. And like she said, the CMOM was submitted on June 25th. Yeah, go to page 7. No, keep going. Is that? Go to the next page. Next one. One more. Right there. Right there. It has the June date when it was completed. And there is more dates on all the reports there on this document. So it has details for all the different projects on the consent order.
Okay, so those are very important documents. I mean, and what do they say? What did they say about our capacity and things like that? So I would like to take a look at them, and I think maybe we should put that on the agenda for the next meeting so that we can get them beforehand and take a look at them and talk about them. Would that be okay with you all?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So you want the CMOM and what's the other one? The force main assessment, right?
Right.
Okay, we'll get that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else that you needed to report on? Omar?
No, that's all I wanted to talk about besides the 5H plan.
I think it's appropriate at this time to answer Peter's question because Peter was asking about the additional projects that we have added. Is there a page that actually reflects that? That shows the additional projects that were added as a result of the condition assessment?
In the semi-annual, there's I think there's a graphic.
The map is probably in that map, I remember.
Yeah, it's page. Well, the graphic is page 16, and in fact, yeah, page. Well, I'm looking at. What am I looking at? Just a moment. I'm looking at the semi-annual. Page 12 talks about these force main projects that have been added, and then it references, I haven't studied this in detail, it references a graphic on the following page where the additional projects are spelled out in purple.
And so what was your question again, Peter? You wanted to know who's doing the project? The city doing it?
I guess the way that the consent order projects are being handled is they're being divided between, I think, between city staff and Hazen. So I'm just wondering, is this more work for city staff? Is it more work for Hazen? And, you know, has that all been thought through?
Peter, let me come back when I give you the overview of to answer all your questions. So if you don't mind, please, unless you want to deviate and you want me to give you.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. I'll provide you as many answers as I can. So just if you just bear with us.
Hey, can we move along then to the next piece of our information?
Absolutely, absolutely. We can go ahead and talk about, I also have that I wanted to talk about is the water consent order.
Yeah, let's do that. Because that's a separate, distinct piece, right?
That is a separate and distinct piece.
Let's talk about that.
Pauline, you can take that down. All right, so as many of you know, back last year, July, we had a couple of water main breaks. One of the main ones was the 42-inch water main break that happened at FXC, and some other issues that took place. And these events led to, a major boil water notice, and in fact, put us in a situation where we ended up with an executed consent order with the DEP. Which was executed on July 24th of this year. So as a part of that, the department is requiring us to submit a preventative maintenance plan to include exercising of 100% of our waterline valves within the first year. And then we have 5 years to do the remainder of them, which about 20% within each year. Additionally, we will have to do some mapping of all of our service lines. And the good news about this is, as many of you know, you probably read, there was actually a hefty penalty that was going to take place. And well, not too hefty considering the other one was a lot larger, but there was a penalty of about $19 million associated with $19,000 associated with penalties of which fortunate for us, the city has been approved to implement in-kind projects so that we do not have to pay those dollars out. And so all we need to do is pay $500 to DP for their costs. And then we have in-kind projects, which is an infiltration trench for flood mitigation at Helter Park that will allow us to move forward with that. So we can actually have Abby, who is our utilities assistant director, who can provide you with additional information on the status of what has been done as it pertains to any mapping or any the valve exercising that may be happening out there in operations. Abby, would you like to come online and talk anything about the water consent order?
Thank you. And my name is Abby Karam. I'm the Assistant Public Works Utility Director. Madam Chair, the city, as a result of the incident at FSC, the city has received a consent order that include 2 parts. The first part include with mapping of and valve exercising of the raw water supply line that comes in from the Prospect Well Field to the 5 Ash water treatment plant. And the second part of the consent order has to do with a mapping of the entire water distribution system and valve exercising of that system. The consent order was signed and registered by the clerk of court on the 24th, as Anissa has mentioned, and we have proceeded with this work. Staff will be undertaking the effort to develop a mapping plan for the raw water main, as well as exercising that. And for the second part, we will be engaging the assistance of a consultant to develop the mapping plan and the exercising plan for the entire water system. So this effort just started. The first two deliverable within the 60 days of the effective date, which should be 2 months. That would be a two plans. One is the raw water mapping plan, and the second one would be the citywide distribution system mapping plan. And those are the immediate deliverable that we're working on. In the same token, our crews have already started the actual physical work by exercising and maintaining the valves on the raw water line that comes in from the well field to the plant. And we have an ongoing effort in exercising and mapping some of the valves throughout the city. But all of these effort has to be organized under the umbrella of this task order. The duration, consent order, I'm sorry, the overall duration of the consent order is 3-year completion. However, the exercising of the entire system will be ongoing effort for the 5-year period as it is recommended by AWWA. That is the entire picture for the water consent order.
Abby,
Yes, ma'am.
is this a different and additional contract to Hazen and Sawyer to do this work?
No, ma'am. We will be engaging the services of another consultant to help us with the water distribution system mapping. That's another consultant.
How much money are we talking about, and where is that money coming from?
That's a small amount of work. I believe Rick Johnson, our distribution and collection, has obtained a task order from WGI, a consultant that the city has on contract through the CCNA process. I don't have the exact number of the cost, but that's not a whole lot of money. Rick, would you like to let us know what the value of that task order?
Yeah, that first task order is just to develop the mapping plan, which is due by September 22nd. That was for $14,836. We do not have a cost estimate yet on the actual work to do the mapping of the entire system. That'll come later in a different task order.
Okay, but we're not going to break the bank on this one, are we?
It's probably going to be significant, but I'd hate to give you a rough estimate. Could be, between $150,000 to $250,000.
Okay, but we have to spend it. We have to do it. We should have done it without having been forced to do it, but we should do it. Yeah, Peter.
There was some reporting, as I remember it, at the time of this incident, that the city had eliminated, as part of a cost-saving measure, a crew which the partial function was to go around and exercise valves. So my question is, does Abby have do you have a dedicated resource crew, whatever you want to call it, that are charged with exercising the valves? Because that was a large part of the problem.
Thank you, Peter, for your asking. And in direct answer to your question is, yes, since I came on board to utilities about 5-6 years ago in 2015, we established the fire hydrants maintenance plan, where we went around and start exercising all the fire hydrants for fire flow and ISO insurance and so forth. And that's an ongoing process. We also have established through the budgetary process, I believe last year after the incidents, a 2 or 3 crews that are strictly dedicated for valve exercising and valve mapping. That work is already started and it's in progress. And at some stage after we formulate the entire plan with DEP, it'll be happening. Our goal is to cover the entire city over a 5-year cycle as the consent order is structured by dividing the city into different sectors and going at it as such. And it would be a reoccurring program. Once you finish the first cycle at 5 years, you go back and you start doing them again and again as we adding valve to the system. And as we go back, some of these valve would have been 5 years older by now. So it's an ongoing effort. It's funded. We have acquired and requested additional equipment. We have hired the staff. And Rick, if you want to add anything to that aspect, go ahead.
The only thing we're waiting for now is we ordered 2 additional specialty vehicles to exercise large valves from WOX, and those will be here later this year, hopefully before the end of this calendar year. And then we'll have 4 full crews dedicated to valve exercising.
I think that would come as very good information for the general public to want to hear how we're addressing this issue, which made so much press when it happened, and we couldn't find the valves, and now we seem to be, really fixated on it, and we won't have a problem going forward. It's good information for people to see. Ralph, you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to elaborate further, and that was the problem with the 42-inch raw water main valve was the fact that they couldn't find it when they need to find it to turn it off. And then once they found it, they basically discovered that it was not capable of closing completely. So the new program, and I have seen the city forces out there with the water distribution systems, and they're more in the residential areas exercising the valves, but it all stemmed back a year or 2 years back when I think the commission decided to eliminate these crews that were going out there and exercising these valves, which is essential and required. I mean, it's not only AWWA, and of course the valve manufacturers recommend that, but it is a regulation to do same. Mainly you need to get the as-built up to speed to locate them, and then by going out and exercising them, you will be able to find them when you need to find them when there's a break that occurs. So the city is back on full speed as far as I understand, and they've been out there. I even wrote an article on that a couple months or so back and shot it to the committee.
Hey, well, we're pretty good on the consent order. Was there any and the only in-kind project that we have to do on that is the infiltration trench in Hector Park?
Yes, ma'am. The penalties on that consent order was in the 19,000 range. The dollar value on that would be 1.5 times the penalty, which is about 30 grand. And that's all wrapped up into the exfiltration trenches at Rio Vista down there. And that has been accepted, and it's a de facto now in the consent order.
Fantastic. Okay, well, water is good.
Okay,
Shall we
great.
move on?
We definitely can move on. Abby, before we go, did you want to talk about some of the sewer breaks? Because I think that's the next topic before we go into.
Yes, quickly, in the same token, some of you may have been aware, we have received a warning letter a few weeks back regarding 4 minor SSOs. 2 of them happened on Las Olas, somewhere around Normie Drive, back to back. Those are between July 18 and like a July 30. And these are small. One was 500 gallon, one was 250, was 900. Two of those were due to a contractor's, external contractors working on one of the projects out there, pump station D38. And the contractor has been informed and stopped from doing so. We also had a incident on Northeast 30th up there, also with the contractor, Murphy Pipeline, who's working on the redundant line that resulted in an SSO. And we have one SSO on the Isles, Las Olas Isles, due to a heavy rain during the week. So all of those are packaged together. We have received a warning letter with regard to those. They will most likely, DEP will most likely impose a penalty, shall we say, in accordance with the consent order. These will be under the category 0 to 1,000 gallon. And I think the financial penalty is not a whole lot on those. That's the aspect of the other regulatory document. Of course, as mentioned by some of the communication that the board and the committee has received, the city in June has received an amendment to the main sewer consent order that was issued in September of 2017. That's the result of the two major breaks that happened in Rio Vista as well as at George English Park over there, as well as the Victoria Park breaks. As you all know, there was a dollar value attached to $1.8 million to that. The city is currently in the process of negotiating that amendment to the original task orders. Those negotiations are not complete. And like every other consent order, this amendment has the provision of an in-kind project in lieu of paying the penalty amount. So we're looking at all of these aspects. We're in the middle of the negotiation that has not been finalized. That amendment has not been signed and has not been recorded. So that's the other aspect of the amendment of the task order. And of course, as Peter has mentioned, the original task order, there was the addition of the 5 additional projects that were added as a result of the semi-annual, as a result of the assessment that we had. So, but that was part of the original.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm confused. The extra 5 projects that we were starting to talk about,
yes,
were added as a part of added work because we found them when we did the planning work in the first one.
It's a result of an assessment effort that we've done and submitted a deliverable. That's the force main condition assessment report. That
the FCOM, that's the FCOM report.
Yeah.
Marilyn, let me come back on that one. So, so just, hold that thought and,
okay,
and just absorb whatever he's saying, and hopefully I'll piece everything together.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so thank you, Abby, for that report. Actually, he touched on the $1.8 million fine that was imposed upon us. So I was going to mention that, but he's already talked about that. And he's already shared with you that we're in negotiations, have several in-kind projects that we're actually proposing to do in lieu of the penalties. The only other thing that I had to include was to talk about the 5-ash. Raj, would you like to close out on the wastewater issues before we go to the plant by coming in and talking and wrapping those other things together, since they're all water, wastewater?
No, let me do this. Let's keep the 5-ash separate for the end, if it is okay with the chair and the group.
Yes.
So let me just kind of quickly wrap up, or at least try to piece everything together, and going back to Peter's opening question. Well, a lot has happened since we met last time. So therefore, you know, if we are a little incoherent and yeah, we are spread out, it is because we are trying to cover too many things too fast, and it may seem a little disjointed, but let me see if I can, you know, piece things together. The first thing is that we had the force-main condition assessment, and that was required as a part of the original consent order. And the force-main assessment condition, it was done, and the consultant, they hired a specialty sub-consultant to identify the pipes in the medium risk, high risk, low risk. And it was a mandated condition in the original condition, in the original consent order, that based on that report and the findings, if there are additional pipes, you need to add them either in the phase 2 or as a CIP. So those 5 projects, Peter, that you're talking about, it is nothing that somebody, we lost it or something happened. It is the direct outcome of the original consent order and a part of the consent order as phase 2 or in the CIP, which we are doing. Just to put everyone at ease, this is in compliance for the consent order, but in reality, as long as I'm here, my goal is to try and have all the force mains relined, whether it is in the consent order or not. We have just created a sort of a priority list. They are needed. It is just like your road resurfacing. You know, if they are bad, they need to be resurfaced. We may prioritize based on a whole host of things. So there is nothing unique that happened for those 5 projects getting added because that was required. So that's what we have done. The second issue deals with what happened with the amended consent order. The amended consent order essentially had 2 components to it. It was the direct result of the pipe breakage that happened at George English. So the amended consent order had 2 primary components. One was to ensure that we have an emergency power supply at GTL. That was, fortunately, the city already had that in the CIP, except it was about 2 years ago, 2 years out. So what they are saying is that they want to move that up quicker, such that in case there is a power outage, the treatment plant does not go down. So they were needed. Staff identified it. There was nothing that was hiding, nothing that it was already in the minds of our staff that we need to do that, except it was out 2 or 3 years. So now we need to just bring it closer. The issue that caused us for a long negotiation with FDE, they wanted to have all 6, they wanted to have it. They wanted to have a temporary power for all the injection wells, which take your effluent in deep in the injection well, and then they gave us about 24 months to construct the permanent generators. Now that was an impossible timeline for 2 reasons. One is that they wanted to have the temporary power supply that they come in tractor trailers. If we were to stack all 6 of them at the GTL that does not have the footprint, we would have no place to move any of the equipment. Plus, for the entire duration that the permanent generators are installed, we would have paid $8 million approximately in the rental. That's something that would have to be moved out. Plus, put another $16 million to get the full, the actual permanent generators. So we were negotiating with them both for the usefulness of those 6 generators and the permanent thing. The permanent generator building is going to involve, as of now that we know, that the existing admin building at GTL would have to be demolished. So has to be a second or two-story building. So because of that, we said we cannot do it in 24. By the time we get the permits and design is going to be 24 months. So we have been negotiating with them. Finally, they agreed that go ahead and put at least one temporary generator for one well until your permanent facility is built. So we have at least one on that count, and we believe that we can accommodate that request. So that was the key component. The second component was related to the water quality. So it kind of dovetails into, Marilyn, your question about the water quality that you are hearing, on the streets. So the water quality was that they required us to do the water quality testing, both at George English and at Tarpon River, Rio Vista, where the breaks they happened. So even before we negotiated or we even talked about the consent order, the staff had taken a proactive approach in assessing the damage to the water quality. It has been in works ever since the damage happened. The issue is that in order to do it the right way, there were a lot of work that had to be done, and those types of investigation could not be done in parallel. They had to be done when one fails, then the second one has to go, and the second one fails. So that's why it just took a little longer time. So both of those locations, they have been in works. And because we were negotiating with DEP, the amended consent order that had two components, one was the generator and the other one was the water quality. So when we were negotiating, our report was already about 90% done. We just wanted to make sure that before we released it, we incorporated FDEP's comments such that we have to do it one time. This is what you want. This is what our findings are, and take the action proportionately. So as a result of that negotiation, we did not release the report, not that there was any malintent or anything, but was to incorporate whatever the FDEP required. Now, to just give a quick overview of what we found. George English is it's a lagoon. It's an oxbow lake type. It's nearly circular with only one place. So it is pretty much like a dead end effect. So when the pipe broke at George English, it was because of the conflict structure that gushed out along with the sewage, the sand. So you had a large sand sewage solid mixture that accumulated near the exit pipe at George English. And because it's a closed water body, it didn't have anywhere to flush out. That has been deposited close to about 500 or 600 cubic yards, out of which 95% is sand and very small amount is the actual solid that you can relate that to the sewage break. So we are very clear. The permits have been obtained, and we agreed that needs to be cleaned. So that is in progress. Rio Vista has been a very interesting finding. And that is because it is a tidal water body. It flows the water, unlike George English, where everything is stagnant, the water flows. So as much as there has been the discharge pipes where the sewage was flowing, there has been, it kind of flowed out naturally. Based on everything that we know and the findings by both the scientists and the engineers, the amount of solids that you can attribute to the sewage spill, believe it or not, it is only about anywhere between 70 to 140, 50 cubic yards is spread over about 400 linear feet, about 300 feet downstream from the discharge point and 100 feet. So the spread is about 1 inch of the solids that you can attribute directly to the sewage spill. Now you can ask, what happened to the rest? What happens at the water treatment plant? In water treatment plant, what we do, there is a bacterial reaction that is accelerated, and that is what the bacteria, they eat the human waste, and this is how it is decomposed. In these types of water bodies that are natural water bodies, and if they are not stagnant, so the decomposition of the solids takes place naturally. And that is because of the bacteria, everything that is present. So because of the bacterial action, most of the decomposition has already taken place. And that being a tidal water body, it has washed most of it with a very thin layer of solids at the bottom of the river. That we are still trying to determine with FDEP, does this qualify for any further action, because there is no biological oxygen demand that is in deficiency. There is no water quality degradation in terms of what was there before and what is elsewhere. But if the DEP makes the determination, or otherwise we make the determination that it needs to be cleaned, then we are going to clean. The only issue as compared to the biggest dilemma that, at least from the staff perspective, is that at George English, you can remove the solids because you got a large park. You can create a spoiler containment site. You can bring the runoff back. There you have got so many homes that we have to come up with a mechanism that that way it does not create more problems than it solves. So we are exploring the removal method, and that has to be done in conjunction with the regulatory agencies, and that is what we are working on. So as far as the water quality is concerned, we have to kind of recognize that this is basically everything that flows from west to east. Fort Lauderdale is the deposit area. Everything that flows from Southwest Ranches, Sunrise, all those things. So what our goal is to try and make sure that we remove what we deposited, making sure that the water quality returns to what it was before. Now, having said that, with all the samples that we have taken, the water quality has indeed returned to what it was before. So there is a perception, and that is not a wrong perception, because I'm not here to defend one way or the other that it is not needed or needed, because we are working with FDEP, and I believe that we are trying to determine the most appropriate method to clean the bottom of the river. So such that we will continue to monitor. We have been monitoring. We do that very regularly, but I think with the situation that we are in, it creates a natural belief in the minds, and I can't blame. It's like we understand, but we just want to assure people that there is no lax on our part. There is nothing hiding on the part of the staff, or it's not that we are not doing anything. It is just that we are just trying to make sure that we take the most appropriate action in the most prudent manner, and that is going to meet not only the needs of the community, but at the same time be in compliance with what the regulatory agencies they want. So having said that, that kind of dovetails into our issue related to the water quality, how it is tied to the sewer break, what the consent order did, and what the amended consent order is asking for is basically trying to quickly summarize, in the sense that the amended consent order resolves the community question by default. It is asking us to take some preventive action at the GTL by ensuring that we have the generators there, such that the power goes out, so that we don't have any issues there. But at the same time, they are asking us to increase the water quality and water monitoring. Now, one of the things that is very interesting that got added recently is about the nutrients. And I would like to use this platform to say that as much as we are clamoring to have the water quality, it is going to be incumbent upon the residents in the, not only in the city, but elsewhere. The nutrient is a very difficult thing to control. People, they do fertilize, they do throw the grass clippings, they do lots of things. There are lots of boats that they discharge their, their human waste into it. So it needs to be a collaborative effort. Even if you go and dredge today and say, okay, we have restored it, unless there are companion actions like nutrient responsibility, making sure that the catch basins, as Nancy was referring to before, that we do take a lot of proactive, and all those activities are an integral part of our federal permit under the Clean Water Act. So tons of activities that go on, except that because there has been a sewage break, it just gives the impression that we are not doing because we can't escape from it. Now, what can happen is, because of this sewage break, we are going to enhance our water monitoring to make sure that we are not only in compliance with our permit, but we are going to do beyond that as well. So I've tried to cover this as much as possible, but going back and answering some of the additional questions, Marilyn, about the CMOM that you said, the capacity, no, we have not, there is no mandated deadline in the consent order that I know that it has to be implemented. But I got two staff people in the DST who issue the permit. We do have a modeling. It may not be 100% accurate, but they do use the model before they approve any new development. And that is something that I have been actively working, and I've been asking folks, whether it is in the area of water or wastewater, if a pipe is determined to be increased in size based on the analysis we have, we ask them, and we have made that an integral part of the issuance of the development order. If they don't agree, then we hold it back. So it is, with what CMOM is going to do, is that going to give us a little bit more accuracy than with what we are predicting now. But even without that, we have been doing this for a while. There was one more element about the cost that, Ralph, can I just finish and then I'll go back? I'm sorry, because I've got these points and I'll lose my thought then. There's an element about the cost, and I know that the cost is a big thing, and there are, and I heard and I read what you forwarded, Ralph. Well, one of the things that I had probably said before, and I'm going to reiterate again, that many times these costs, they are based on the planning document. And the planning document that we have been using for a while has been Reese's report. Reese was done in 2017, and I believe that they are out of Orlando area. And I'm not going to say how they did it, but let me just share that normally the way the reports of this size they are written, you will have some very knowledgeable person, a vice president of design or something. They are going to come and they are going to sell you what the scope of the work is. Once they get the project, they are going to hire a fresh student from college or somebody who has 1 or 2 years of experience. They will write the report. They are totally detached from the reality, what happens in the ground. If you ask them what it costs, they are going to probably call somebody without verifying the numbers, and they give you the numbers, and to assume that that is going to be cast in stone is going to be a very, I don't accept that. So those are planning numbers. The actual number can be had is only if you get into the detailed design. So that's the reason why you have the detailed design to get the actual cost. And even if the numbers, they increase, and I get very and I'm going to say this from a personal experience, and again, I'm going to use this platform. I've lived in this country for 38 years. And anytime something comes to me, I always convert that into Indian rupees. So $1 is equal to 75 times, okay? So anytime there's $1 million project, it looks like 75 million rupees and it gives me a heart attack. And then I come very hard on my staff. Why are you doing this? And is there a better way to do it? So we pay very close attention to what happens. It's an open competitive process. We don't give anything to anyone without going through the process. The purchasing is very intent. They do due diligence, and many of them, they go through the attorney's office, they go through the auditors. So even if the cost has increased, we have to bear in mind that it has increased for several reasons. One is the planning document, and they are based on, you know, whatever numbers between the consultant and the you know, the staff, and both of them may not be 100% right in terms of the design. And again, going back to something that Peter was saying in the beginning, whether it is a staff and consultant. So let me just, I think this was a very good question. That again, this is a good platform to share. The staff, and I'm not going to mince my words. The city decided to get rid of all the engineers. So we only had project managers. It just so happens that we have got project managers who happen to be engineers, but are they good in design, that they can check that the design work by the consultant? And this is something that I have tried in the last 6 months that I have been with the city. I've been challenging my staff as best as I can to bring the design component. So there is now going to be better collaboration, but it is going to take a little while before we are able to bring the engineering component, or at least some semblance of engineering component, back in the equation. So I said I've spoken to quite a bit, and I'm open for any questions. And I know, Ralph, you had your hands up first, so please.
Thank you. Yes, Raj, thank you. And we're glad that you're here with the city, because it's just a short period of time. You're like I am, I guess. I've been called a micromanager about getting projects done right before I retired. But you made a statement regarding the, maybe it was a baseline of the canals that they'd been cleaned up and brought back to the original, I don't know, a certain level of pathogenic organisms that were in there from the wastewater spills and everything. But probably the original readings included, and you'll have to tell me yes or no on there, but I remember even the intercoastal would have outfalls that were going out from restaurants, even from like septic tanks that were going out, emptying into the waterways. I would hope that all of the areas, and especially the residentials, they've been gone through and inspected to make sure that there's no continuing outfalls that are going out and polluting, creating a higher level than what should be if it's.
Ralph, to answer your question, I think, you know, all that is included as a part of our NPDES permit, the stormwater permit. And one of the things that I have, and even before I've come on board, but it is going to be a little bit more aggressive, that as we do the stormwater, we know that the stormwater, major stormwater program is going to start next year with the first issuance of the bond, although the monies have been, you know, committed. We are going to be adding the quality component. The way stormwater is as a part of the permit, it is quantity, which is flooding, and the quality, which is making sure that our water bodies are clean. So we will make sure, and that is already a part of the design, that they are going to have intercepting. They already use it, but we are going to be using more aggressively as a part of the permit and as a part of what we are supposed to do, because we are going to be spending millions of dollars. And this is just a very small component to make sure that you have the interceptors in place before the water is discharged into the water body. So we will be accomplishing many of those things. And it is because of this reason, for exactly the same reason, Ralph, you described, that when we were fined the 19,000 that Abby was talking about, the total value being 30, I said, gee, I'm not going to pay anybody a dime. Let's go ahead. We are already doing something in Hector Park for the exfiltration system. And the exfiltration system, what does it do? It does two things. One is it is going to reduce the flooding. And it is also going to, rather than the sheet flowing back into the canal, it is first going to go into that medium that is going to treat the water. So therefore I said, I'm going to get a BOGO. I'm going to get, get this one for free. And so we included that and they accepted it. So we are going to extend the same type of philosophy. It's already in the works, but it is going to be expanded just to make sure we do that. And regardless, whether we do it today or 3 years or 5 years down the road, as a part of the stormwater permit, we will be required to do it. So the only thing that has happened is that instead of the homework being due 6 months from now with the DEP's stick, we will have to do it now in a month. So, but ultimately we have to do it.
I want to take this opportunity too to thank you and Dr. Gassman for finally getting to the intersection of Northeast 56th Street and Northeast 22nd Avenue, where it was discovered that in the swale, I don't know who had paved it, probably the owner, had put an asphalt layer in the swale area, prohibiting the stormwater from sheet flowing off and percolating down in there, which caused that area to flood mercifully. So it was in excavating and going out and researching and discovering what was causing the excessive flooding, it was sort of a somewhat impervious layer underneath there, prohibiting the water to percolate down into the groundwater. So it's been done. Thumbs up to you guys, and it's appreciated.
Thank you. And there's one more thing that I want to address that was regarding we could not find the valves. And the reason we could not probably, and I'm not going to defend, it was not here, but I'm just talking more from the practical side of it. And Fort Lauderdale is not unique in the sense that you cannot find the valve, because it has happened to me a few times as well. And I'm sure, Ralph, you might have experience, because you can't have a perfect map. Somebody always does something funky and you don't know about it until something happens. But we do have water maps. We do know, 70% of where things are. We may not know exactly, and it was just the bad luck that we could not find. But we do have, we are not, the maps may not be 100% accurate, but something is out there. And as a part of our water consent order, we are going to be remapping everything, identifying every valve that is out there, and the process has already begun.
That was caused because the city had stopped, before you even got there, had stopped the exercising the valves, both the raw water and potable water systems. And so with that, things happen. It gets covered over, repaved over, or filled over. So by exercising, it's kind of an insurance that it's periodically people are going out there and they have to locate the valve in order to shut it off, so that, and then fully open it and fully close it and fully open it again to make it operational. So in that process, they may be upgrading their as-built information. They say, hey, it was on the other side of the street. We found it on the other side of the street.
Yeah, we are attacking all these issues from multiple, fronts. But again, there are lots of things that need to be done. And we are trying to do the best we can with the resources and everything else, the workload and the practicality. I just don't want to take too many projects and not be able to manage the consultants or the contractor and end up with the same issues that the community might raise. How come the price has gone, too far up? Because you just don't want to, you just want to make sure that it's manageable based on the priority.
Jerry, did you have a question, Jerry? I thought I saw your hand up. Jerry? No? Okay. So Raj, thank you very much for that sort of summary. I don't think it should come as any surprise to people like us who are into this, that the cost of a project rises as you get into the project. I mean, it happens. And it's to be expected, actually. And actually, when we were doing our original analysis based on the Reese report, and the Reese report said it was like X number of billions of dollars, we made a point of pointing out that that was an estimate, and it could very likely and most likely would be higher. But I do have a question on the money, in that these additional 5 projects that were identified vis-a-vis the work in the first consent order, they're going to cost a lot of money. And we were financing the first tranche of those projects with the first $200 million bond. Okay, how is these additional 5 projects put into that first bunch? How are we going to fund those? Would they be the ones in the next tranche of $200 million, or do we have enough, or were there actually funds in the CIP that we can advance for them? What's the situation there?
Yeah, Marilyn, I think it's a combination.
Exactly.
It's a combination of your return of investment monies. We have got some additional funding from there. We can reprioritize the project based on the mandate and whatever we can push out, for the second issuance of the bond. So it's going to be a combination, because at the time when when we issued the first bond, I remember that that the list of projects that that we had presented, and you were aware of, those things have changed. So it is going to be a combination depending on the cost everywhere else. But again, it's only $200 million, and you have got very long ways to go. Reese's report talks about $1.4 billion. So therefore, you still have got very, very long ways to go. So we will be prioritizing based on it is just started. I mean, it is like, even with your consent order, it is just a start. You still have got, tons of force mains that need to be addressed. They need to be replaced. They need to be modified. You've got you just have 7 basins or 5 basins that you have doing the lining, and you still have to line the remaining pipes. So there is a lot of work. There is a lot of work that still needs to be done, and it is going to be on that, through that bonds.
Okay, well, at some point, I think it would be helpful. Peter, I'll be right with you. At some point, I think it would be helpful to get an updated analysis of how much money we have spent from the bond funds, okay?
Yeah.
And how much more money we're going to need, and when we're going to need that more money. Because those are very important, elements of the infrastructure planning. And I know you're doing a lot of work, and I know you're doing yeoman's job on some of these issues, but we need to get a handle on how much money do we have left to do this? How much more money do we need, and when we need that money? Because somebody has got to figure out when we're going for that next bunch of bonds.
Yeah, we can try and get you a sort of a cash flow analysis, if you would, in terms of when it is going to be needed on an annual basis.
Okay. Peter.
So we've sort of been talking about many of the points in the email that was forwarded to us by Ralph. It is Paul Chettle, and it certainly got my attention because Paul, as many of us know, was actually very instrumental in, as an individual, in bringing these issues to the forefront. So, I did pay a lot of attention. I'd half expected that Paul, might join us, and that comes back to your point, Chair, about the time availability for the public. But I do feel basically Raj and you, Chair, covered a lot of the points. The only other point I would add is I don't think it's true to say that the funding has been available for 10 years plus, because that certainly isn't the case. And then the final point is that the difference between estimated projects and actually bid contracts. And for example, those big force main contracts, the north and the south, correct me if I'm wrong, Raj, but if those were to increase in cost above a certain fairly low level, you have to take change orders back to the commission. Is that not the case? Cost increase on those contracts?
Yes, Peter, you are absolutely right. We don't, there are some very strict guidelines and requirements. There is a percentage, which I believe, and I could be wrong, that we are allowed up to 10%, which is very standard for the cost of the project that you can do as a change order without having to take it to the commission.
That's a lot of money on those projects, Raj.
It is, yeah, it is. But at the same time, it still has to go through the scrutiny of the purchasing department, the attorney's office. Everybody reviews it. It's not that it is just a project manager that level. So those things have to be, or any cost increase or any change in the cost, it all has to go to the commission for approval. So there is nothing.
Just to reiterate, on contracts were competitively bid and awarded.
Oh yeah. Those yes, you have to take beyond that that threshold. You have to take any changes back to the commission. You just don't arbitrarily do without bringing commission into the picture and having a public hearing on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Which brings me up to a question that I think I should address to Pauline or Anisha. Are there any people who have registered to speak from the general public?
Yes, we have
How many
two.
do we have?
Two.
Just the two?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's only 3:47, so we will have plenty of time to have those two people speak at the end of the meeting, as is our usual practice. I assume we're going to continue with our usual practice.
Correct.
Yes, but going to the agenda, public comment comes after these public works updates.
Gotcha. Okay, does anybody have any questions we got a lot of information, it's a lot to sort of digest all at once, but does anybody, especially the new people, does this, I know this is a lot, but you guys are into this whole thing in terms of your professional lives, so maybe it's not a lot for you, but if you have any questions, don't be shy, now's the time to ask them. Okay.
How about an old guy?
As long as it's not about infiltration, Ralph, you taught us all that.
I wouldn't even mention sand. Oh. I was hoping we'd get back to the disposition of the 5-ash.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I was
going to cover that. That's why I had my hands up as well.
Yeah.
Well, the 5-ash update is that that the commission, I'm not too sure if I do not believe that they have taken a formal vote yet, but I could be wrong. But we do have monies requested in next year's budget to hire an owner's representative to take us through the process of building a new water treatment plant. It is going to be high-level treatment. The estimated cost is $450 million to about $500 million. That is the estimate. The presentation has been made, and I think once we get the owner's rep on board, we are going to start engaging a little bit more aggressively. In the interim, the question is that what happens to 5-ash? So because we are going to be building a new water treatment plant, 5-ash, we have tried to do, and there have been lots of improvements going back and forth for the last 8-10 years. And so what I have done with our staff at the 5-ash, that we have to keep the plant running, and we have to keep the plant running until the new facility is built. So we have been hoping that it is going to be, no matter how soon you do it, you are still looking at 5 to 7 years of permitting, design, construction, and everything else. So it is important that we keep this plant running. So we have identified the improvements that we are going to do at the 5-ash plant that is going to keep us running, which is including a component of what we call the carbon dioxide treatment. And Ralph, you would probably be more familiar with some of these lingos, that it is going to, hopefully it is going to take care of some element of the color of water. And Omar is online, and we have spent a lot of time trying to determine if there is any way, if we were to move around some wells at our well field, if is the quality of raw water is going to allow us to deliver lesser yellow potable water coming out of the plant. Unfortunately, with the present system, which was built way back in the 60s, the lime softening, it does not. So the quality or the type of water, the pigment, the yellow color coming out of our well, and the lime softening system that we have at 5-ash, they do not render a good looking drinking water as much as it is fully compliant with the law, as good as our Peel Dixie, because that is based on the reverse osmosis strain. So that's where we are, but we are going to make sure that we increase the use of our sand filters. We make sure that we clean them periodically. We build them some backup, and then add the carbon dioxide treatment train. So hopefully we'll see if this works. If it doesn't work, then it really puts a little, it makes it a little difficult, because we don't have a whole lot of footprint at any of our facilities. The 5-ash. There was one thought that I was discussing with my staff, is there possibility of adding a sort of a partial reverse osmosis strain that we can mix the water to give a better appearance. Not that there is anything wrong with it, but that is going to be after we have implemented these improvements that we are talking about, and I think by the end of this week or next week, the staff is going to give me a recommendation that what are the improvements that are needed to keep the plant running for 5 to 7 years, and we will start implementing that expeditiously.
If I may, my concerns, I didn't want to get into too much of the detail at this time on the actual treatment processes. Now, since the 1954 5-ash plant, lime softening, and since that time, obviously, we've got more technologically abled treatment process to be more efficient and effective. My concern was that the former Public Works Director, my understanding is that he stopped the Corolla engineers from completing their pilot study, which was complete the water treatment analysis from the prospect well field necessary to determine the best, most efficient, and cost-effective treatment on 5-ash. That's one of my concerns, and I mean it's like we have, I think the estimate was $432 million for, I don't know if it was their number 11 or 18th recommendation, Corolla's recommendation. But I think $150,000 or even more to do a complete pilot study is worth it, to make sure that before we invest $433 million, we've got the full complete process of analyzing that water to determine the most efficient and cost-effective method. That was one point. The other point was they're proposing to reload it remotely at the prospect well field. And there's a couple of things wrong with that, more than two. One is I'd hate to put a plant right in close proximity of the well field, mainly because it's at the northwest quadrant of the executive airport. And it's not that we haven't had any small aircraft crashes, but that's one sure way of, increasing that. The other thing is from a design perspective, and I was a designer a long time. When you move the proposed plant, I don't know if it's a mile up to the Prospect Wellfield site, but you're moving it further away. And that means that you're going to be pumping larger transmission main down to the existing 5-ash transmission mains to connect with that. Means higher service pumps, more pressure to get that water flowing from the Prospect area down to the 5-ash. Ideally, when you're designing it, if you're starting from, you try to put the water plant, just as you would the sewer plant, but water plant in the center of your distribution area. Because of the piping, you don't have a lopsided thing where we experience now, for an example, even from the 5-ash, we pump the water all the way to the east. Before we got into the chloramines, when it was just chlorine, the chlorine would drop down, and by the time it reached the easterly extremity, you really needed to set up something to re-chlorinate it to, because it lost its disinfectance capability. With the chloramine, with the ammonia of NH3 ammonia, that's supposed to extend the life of the disinfection of chlorine a little bit further out. But it also has adverse components such as nitrification, as you know. And there's problem. Ammonia is a very corrosive chemical, and so it has negative things. But getting back to the 5-ash, those are like 3 quick and dirty components that should really be looked at. And then the other 4th one that gets involved is, there was talk about the P3, public-private partnership. And I've checked around a little bit, and it really doesn't seem to be conducive for a water treatment plant to get bankers or any other person in there that they're looking on the profitability of this project. And so I'll wrap it up quickly here. It's so there's a number of things that really, in my mind, try to be ironed out and resolved before we start shooting $433 or $450 million plant somewhere that it could turn around and bite us all.
Ralph, let me start with the P3 concept, and then maybe tie that back into the other non-financial issues that you raised. The intent of getting an owner's representative is essentially to answer all those questions that you have said, to guide us through what is going to be the Correo report is one thing. What people are saying is one thing. They are going to piece everything together to give us, the pros and cons of various options, and including the financial options. The P3 concept is that even if it is a P3, it is not that somebody is going to give you money for free. Ultimately, you have to pay for it. And it's going to come out of, the rates and whatever structure we set up. Fortunately for the city, and I do not know a whole lot, but the rating, the financial rating of city is much better than many companies that are out there. So just the sheer based on the cost of the project, and even if you have a 0.5% difference, it is going to result in millions of dollars of saving, or the payback period. So that is definitely an advantage to that. But all those things are going to be hashed out as a part of that particular exercise, where the owner's rep is going to guide us through the whole process. Going back to the design part of it, Ralph, many of your points are well taken, and I think that again is going to be part of the of that exercise, that we are going to look at the feasibility, the hydraulic model, the impacts of nitrification, the impact of residual chlorine, the network circulation of water such that, you know, you do not have the residual impact, and you go also, all those things are going to be part of that exercise. But even with that, is that going to be a perfect solution? I'm not too sure, because when you get into those finger isles, you do have dead end water lines, and you are going to have some impact. But those things can be addressed by having some booster system in between, and that is all going to be part of the design. So they are all going to be looked at. Nothing final yet, but many of those variables, they are in the mix. So this is, you know, this is what my, and one last question, Ralph, about the experiment. I think I spent a lot of time to trying and figure out, for 150,000, I'll give somebody $200,000 if they can just tell me. But they are just trying to lowball something, and if you start questioning them, there is very little substance. It's very easy. I have actually assembled, you know, three people, including our consultant, people I got from American Water Works Association, talked to a couple of my friends who have been in this business. There is nothing like 150, the experimentation, because once you zero in, it is a low ball number. And then it's like, it comes with so many caveats, and I am just very reluctant. But if you have something, hey, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to pursue it. Peter, sorry, Madam Chair, you're.
Peter.
Hey, Raj, just another real fast point for Ralph. Yeah, a pilot study is always advantageous, even though we have a lot of computerized models now that look at this new technology for the nanofiltration, and they're about 99.5% accurate these days. And based on the raw water, it'll tell you how many membranes you need, what's the everything that you need to know. So Carollo did some of that at some extent, but you know, there could be a small pilot system that it can be set up just to, you know, identify if there is any problems. But usually these days, those models are very accurate.
Okay. My only point was to make sure that we've done, you know, the city does as much investigation and make sure that the unknowns are knowns, and you're not going to get them all. But at least before you make that big step, before the 433 million, that you've got a warm and fuzzy feeling that you've done everything possible to get the best solution.
Ralph, all I know is I'm not a water design expert, but with the lime softening plant, any combination is not going to give you the quality of the water. It has to be this or the other, and that is way too old technology to meet the expectation, because people have a natural tendency to compare the Peel Dixie water with the 5-ash, and there is no comparison.
No, there's no comparison.
And that's the issue.
Okay, let's get to Peter.
So I just wanted to remind everybody, staff and members of the task force, that time is of the essence. We do not want to fall into this trap again of kicking the can down the road like happened with the false mains. So Raj, when you say, you talked about feasibility, and who's going to be doing that? What more? Just lay out broadly, if you can, what you see the timeline as being. I'm assuming you're going to have to go to the commission for some sort of go, no-go decision at some point.
Peter, I don't, excuse me, I don't fully understand the full scope of the question.
We've had the Carollo report, and just to remind everybody, the predecessor task force to this took a vote on a motion to have a consultant. I forget exactly how it was worded. I remember making the motion, and it was defeated, to ask the commission to have another consultant take a look at the Carollo report and other aspects. Now, Raj, you're talking the way it comes across is you're talking that staff is going to look further at various aspects of this. Is that correct?
Now, in combination with the owner's representative for which the funding is being sought in this next year's budget. So it is not going to be an independent staff investigation, but it is going to be in conjunction with the owner's representative, who is going to be a specialized person in this area.
So won't the owner's representative have a solution, a preferred course of action in mind automatically?
I mean, yes, I mean that, the intent is to help the city guide through this complex process that is going to be both engineering, environmental, and financial. So it is from that perspective that this owner's representative is going to guide us.
Raj, can I ask you about that a minute? I mean, I just finished a project for my condo, a $500,000 project for my condo, and we hired a building representative, an owner's representative. His job was not to redesign the project. His job was not to change the specifications of the project. The engineer and the architects did all that. His job was to manage the project. Okay,
Yes.
so when I hear owner's representative, that's the kind of person I think of. When you say owner's representative, I don't think you're talking about the same kind of a person.
No, it's not. No, you are talking about a project manager that you have described for your condo, not the owner's rep who is going.
No, he's an owner's rep. Okay, we could play with the words. He represented us, and he made sure the contractor did the job that he was contracted to do.
No, it is going to be. It is going to go beyond that, in the sense that all the technology that is available, looking at the design, is going to be a combination of both finance and engineering to tell us what is going to be the most appropriate to help us guide through that.
Yeah, but Raj, didn't Carollo tell us? I mean, Carollo told us where it should be and what kind of technology we should use. Are we revisiting all that again?
Some part of it, yes. And it is not, yes, so it's not a bad idea to have a second opinion if you're talking about that large sum of money. So it is going to be, because they left lots of open-ended things and they were trying to get through the back door. So we decided that in order to get another set of fresh eyes, take a look at it. So that's what we decided, that owner's rep, because the magnitude and the complexity of the project is such that somebody who is more familiar with these types of projects would be more appropriate, going beyond the Carollo report.
Okay, so is there a scope of services for this person?
Brief scope of service is being drafted, and it was done by Rob Hernandez before he left the deputy city manager. So he has produced some brief scope of work that is with Anisha, I think, and at least with some of us. So we have not, we'll start acting on it after the budget is approved.
So the commission hasn't seen the scope of services for this person yet?
No, it is only a request in the budget.
Without an indication of what this person is going to do?
I mean, typically, I'm not too sure if, I'm sure that there is some brief write-up in the explanation, what do you need for, but is that sufficient? I do not know the answer.
How much money are we talking about for this person?
I think we are talking about a little over $200,000, 200 or 250, something to that effect. I could be wrong, Madeline, so don't.
I would like to know a little bit more about this, because if this is a project manager for a $450 million project, that's not a $200,000 contract. A $200,000 contract to me is, let's second guess Carollo, which, may not be a bad idea. Let's get a second set of eyes on the Carollo recommendations. But I'm reading this as a different thing than we're ready to get a project manager to get the project going. I'm reading it differently.
Okay, well, we can get the clarification. Anisha, you might have something to add.
Yes, based on my recollection, Raj, we also were looking at to determine the type of procurement. So if it was going to be a design build, if we were going to go through the a management type of contract. So it was, is a P3 appropriate? Should we, that's why Raj keeps saying, looking at the financials to determine what is the best way. Should it be done internally? Or should we do a P3?
Should be design build, should be risk, and what are the what are the similar types of things. So it's a combination of both engineering or technical and finance.
I'm calling me skeptical. For
okay,
Just color me skeptical. For that amount of money,
Madeline, that's fine. We can, whatever information we'll have, we can provide you with that.
We can put it on the agenda for next month's meeting.
please.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Peter.
Well, yes, the last thing I want to do is to delay this, and we have to accept that the commission ultimately makes the decision. But I don't know that we need input to exactly what form. Well, maybe we do. You know, there's different forms of contract that can be, with P3 being one extreme and design, bid, build being the other extreme. And it sounds like the staff and therefore the commission has not yet decided on exactly which form of contract is going to be applied in the replacement of fire ash. So I think we would like to at least be kept in the loop on that thinking. But it's, you know, again, it needs to be quick, doesn't it? I mean, this is, we're repeating the history's mistakes here.
If you recall, we actually made a resolution on this and sent it to the commission saying that in essence, P3 may make sense, but there were some conditions that we put on this. And one of the main conditions was that you never lose control of the asset and you never lose control of the rate structure. So I think that that report or that resolution should be attached or incorporated into this person's work, as that would have been, that was our recommendation to that, for that.
Definitely, we can include that. Yeah.
Can we hear more about this as soon as possible, please?
It's on the agenda for next week, next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, well, gosh, that was an awful lot, and it's 4:12. Can I make a suggestion that we allow the people who've been patiently waiting to speak, speak? And
Marilyn,
we could wrap
can
it
you
up.
hear me?
Yes,
Marilyn?
Norman, yes.
They cut off my picture, so you can't see me. I just one thing, can we get for next meeting an update on the police building?
Yeah, that'll be a hell of a meeting too, yes.
I got a quick one for Norm on that. Tomorrow, the commission is going to be looking at 6 design engineering for the new police headquarters for $6 million. So it's let me see, it's on the, well, it's
okay
on the it's the CP, it's for consent purchase CP-10 to 20-0589. A motion to approve ranking the firms for a $6 million consultant for the new police building headquarters, excuse me.
That's moving along pretty well. Has there been any change in the siting? Is it still going to be at the same location? I know there were a couple of other options floated around that would have, in my opinion, delayed the situation. Are we still looking at the existing site and using the existing site?
That's the latest that I heard.
And to the best of our knowledge, it is still the same site. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Norman, for reminding us. You know, we'll bring that up at the next meeting. Okay. How do you want to handle the individual people who want to speak? Do you make them available on the screen and then we give them their 3 minutes? How do you want to do that? How is that done?
The moderator can unmute them. The first one is Paul Cattle. Cattle. And his last digits moderator is 1754.
1754.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, Chair. Congratulations on your renomination.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I don't believe anybody has been more in favor of trying to help public works, but every once in a while I get a little frustrated, so I'm going to get that out of the way, and then I want to speak about a couple of things. I think we have to tighten up the public notice and the backup documents. I was kind of surprised to hear, Chair, that you had backup documents that we don't have. And I was also kind of surprised that the consent order wasn't on the backup. The force main condition wasn't on the backup. The e-sciences and wood environmental cleanup of Tarpon River and George English were not on the backup. Those are kind of important. So that's it. That's my complaint. Now I'll move on to what I was calling to say. Today's meeting is critical. When the Reese report was presented to us, we were told by the mayor and the city manager, both of whom are now gone, that was the Cadillac plan. And there was no way the fixes were going to cost more than $1.4 billion. Okay, so if you want to call it a planning document now, that's fine, but you're going to seriously have to consider resetting public expectation about the cost, because if the Cadillac plan is the Ford Pinto plan, then people should probably know. Now, Raj has nothing to do with this. He's cleaning up the mess. Nobody's a bigger fan of Raj than I am. The phase 1 and phase 2 projects in the consent order are now going to cost an extra $107 million more than the Reese report budgeted. Okay, that's 107. I put that down to procrastination and deferred maintenance. I get it that you might want to call it a planning document. I'm prepared to meet somewhere in the middle, but you'll get my point in a second. Let's go to 5-ash, the consent order. As we heard today, and you can read in the consent order for yourself, we got that because we failed to maintain the valves at the water treatment plant. I'm going to remind everybody that year after year, residents have begged the City Commission to stop rating 5-ash funding, to stop deferring maintenance at 5-ash, and to stop abandoning projects at 5-ash, and we have failed every single time. So you as a task force advisory board have a unique opportunity to finally stop this, or at least make an effort greater than me, a lowly renter, asking these same questions. The great news is that you're all residents. So when you look at the cost over, the change in the budget, whatever you want to call it, of $107 million, you're going to be participating and paying for that. When you see the lowball number on Corolla for the new 5-ash, which is 310, I get it that the preferable one happens to be 400 and something, but Reese was looking at 100 million. Okay, so that's an extra 200 to 300 million that you're looking at there. Again, you're going to participate in paying that extra cost. And this is Fort Lauderdale. If you think that that's going to be done in 5 to 7 years, I would caution you. And while you're doing that, as Raj pointed out, you're going to have to pay to maintain the existing 5-ash. And again, it's been rated 6 ways till Sunday. And I'm going to use some hyperbole that the mayor used, that it's held together by spit and chewing gum, but it's not looking that good. Then I want to get into 2 examples of deferred maintenance. The consent order. The consent order regarding those 5 projects that were discussed, the force main projects, I'm going to just read to you directly from the state, and this seems to be a little bit more of a different explanation. The reason why those 5 were added was because they experienced significant and recurring failures. That's why they were added. So that's a little bit of a different example. And also in the consent order, I'm going to remind you about the emergency generator for George T. Lohmeyer. We have been asking for this since 2016. In the 2015 CIP, it was budgeted for 2.49 million. 2016 was 2.4. 2017 was 3.9. 2018 was 3.9. I mean, it's been on there for a while. So again, it took a consent order for us to have to do that. That's the way that the city operates. And if you've got one job, and I get it, you don't have to do it, but you've got one job, it's to try and get the commissioners to understand that deferred maintenance is a failed policy. It's costing us millions of dollars. I wish you all the very best. I thank all of you, including the new people who I don't know at all. I wish you the very best in serving this city. We desperately need the help. And thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Paul. Can I follow up with Raj for a minute on one of those items? I remember that as part of the first consent order, we put back $30 million for 5-ash, for the 5-ash plant. The $30 million that had been deferred in order to pay for the Los Olas break. We were using $30 million of the first $200,000 to do some work at 5-ash. And I believe it's actually been approved to do some work. Now you're saying we're putting together a budget that includes that 30 million and more money to keep it running for the 7 years, Raj?
No, Marilyn. The initial budget was spread over this has been in making for about, I would say, several years.
Yeah.
And it was predicated upon that we are not going to be, we are going to upgrade this plant and we are not going to build a new facility. Okay. So there were lots of things that were in that estimate or in that appropriation that would no longer be needed if we are going to be building a new plant. And that is something, that's the reason why the scale has been reduced. It's enough to give 5 to 7 years of work. And that is precisely what the staff is going to present to me next week. So I've been working on this for 3 months and I have, I have a pretty big sheet. I've got a very big sheet, 24 by 36 with 9 different people. And some of them, they are online. And I did not tell the other person that I wanted them to go through the list of all the items. And they all came back surprisingly within the range of $0 to $17 million. So the original scope changed based on who you spoke to. So we are trying to keep it's a sum total of the feedback from the engineers, from the consultant, from the field people, everybody else, and that is what we are going to be pursuing.
Okay, but we have already got an appropriation of $30 million for 5-ash. Am I correct? I remember it.
If you have it, I'll do the other more pressing projects and I'll try to make Paul happy.
Raj, what Chairman Woman is referring to is there is a 5-ash reliability project that was a part of the CIP. And I believe it was like about $27 million, but the project came.
Anisha, I'm answering the same thing a little differently.
I know you are. I know you are. I'm just clarifying what she's referring to is that project, but you are revising the project because you basically you're rescoping it because you don't need $47 million worth of work done.
Yes.
Okay, now I understand. So it's not a question of we need to go find more money for 5-ash. We have money.
No, we on it. Hey, Marilyn, I'm giving you money back.
That's what I'm thinking.
Now, it was a $47 million project, total upgrades, and 27 million or something to that tune was appropriate for this work. And when I started looking at it, he said, hey, do we really need this? So I just went through the whole exercise. So that's why I'm just saying that I might have some monies left to do other projects.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, who's Peter?
Through you, Chair, is it okay if I ask Paul a couple of questions?
Yes, if Paul is still with us, yes, certainly.
Are you still there, Paul?
And Chairman, don't forget you have a second person that is signed up.
I'm looking at the clock. Paul,
yes, I've been unmuted. Yes, Mr. Partington, how are you?
Okay, good, thanks. Where did you find that statement that those 5 projects were because of continuous or whatever the words were, breaks?
On an official FDEP letter from June 19th, 2020 to the city, and the full statement is regarding the force main condition assessment. It says, it basically says, included in those comments were suggestions to include force main replacement projects in the areas that experienced significant and recurring failures, particularly over the December 2019 holiday, to the phase 2 project list. On May 19th, it's important, 3 more lines. On May 19th, the city responded to that letter, indicating that it had not included those replacements within its evaluation, and to do so would require a significant extension to the department's consent order. So that's just a different tone from the state. And again, these projects, those force main projects, particularly Rio Vista, were on the radar for a decade. And they were funded by the 2018 bond, and that's the history of it.
That's correct, Paul. I'm talking about the 5 additional projects, which we've talked about as having been found through an earlier stage of the consent order of a condition analysis. So
right. So that's an interesting one, right? Because that comes from the cost assessment update, and that's another document that could have been in the
You've got
phase 2 cost assessment. It's a 9-pager. I'll email it to you right now. And that was sent by Hazen and Sawyer in the city on July 21st. I'll send that to you.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to understand your philosophy. When would you feel comfortable that expenditure on maintaining 5-ash is ramped down, knowing that there is a replacement coming?
So
whatever. Tell me what criteria you would apply to not continue to spend money on 5-ash.
80% of the problems are because of communication. So what we've just heard right now is more information than we've ever heard. So we just heard about the 30 million out of the 200 million. We've heard about the total cost project. We've heard about potentially getting money back. And when Raj says that he's comfortable doing something, even back to the days when he was the liaison for the infrastructure task force, I'm all in. So if he says that that's what he needs, then that's fine. But we didn't have that information in the public domain. So if he thinks that that's going to be sufficient to hold us over for the next 5 to 7 years while you do the P3 or the Corolla or whatever it is that you choose to do, then that's fine. But we don't have that information. So part of what I do is to try and get a reaction from the city because there's a vacuum or an information void. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker, can you get them unmuted?
It's going to be David Orszewski.
Oh, David. Okay. Let's get David on. For those of you who don't know, David was one of the original members of the task force. Where's David? There's David. I don't see him unmuted.
Moderator, could you unmute him, please? I think he is now.
Hello, David?
He's unmuted.
He's unmuted.
I don't think David's connected to audio via his microphone. David, can you hear us?
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, now I think he's muted.
David, can you hear us? Yeah. I don't think he's connected to audio. He's unmuting himself, but we can't hear him. David, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you, which means your microphone is not enabled.
Okay, Madam Chair, we do have a couple of things that I want to go through before we close out this meeting. I want to make sure, at least while I'm your liaison, I want to always make sure that I go through the list of action items so that we can ensure that we come back to the meeting with all of those action items either completed and we're on the same page. Also, one more thing, there's an oath to office that many of you got some information about. Some of you have already submitted your oath of office and there are some of you are still pending. And so if you can work through that before the next meeting, it would be much appreciated. Pauline did send an email stating if you need the notary, you can always come to City Hall and let Erica know and she'll come out and notarize the document for you.
Thank you. Okay, did you want to give that list now?
Yeah, I was gonna ask if he can try one more time with David.
Okay.
Jerry, David still can't get on?
No, he's not. He's still not connecting through his microphone.
Okay. All right, so starting from the beginning of my list, there was a request for the monthly flows for wastewater. And also there was a request for information needed to support the recommendation for the moratorium. So there was a question about the legal opinion and what is needed procedurally as it relates to the moratorium. Then you've asked for the documents that were included in the semi-annual consent order report, which includes the CMOM and the force main assessment report. So you've asked to be copied on those reports. There's always also a request for the bond expenditure update. and basically a spend analysis on what is needed and when it will be needed and how much will be needed for the projects and when we're going to do that next drawdown. On the next meeting, we've asked to include the police building to have a conversation about that. And so I'll have the chief project engineer that come in provide us with an update. As you may know, there is one project manager that is hired to manage and monitor that report. And I know Paul, one of our first speakers, asked about some of the backup documents, but being that this is the first meeting, the agenda was pretty light, but there was a lot that we needed to cover. And so working after the fact through department, we actually identified several of the different things that we wanted to discuss and bring you guys up to speed on. And so we didn't have those documents, but we definitely will make sure. Yes, is that David?
Yes, it is.
Oh, David,
great.
hi.
I had so many microphones. I had never mind. Do I have 3 minutes?
Yes, you do, David.
Thank you for putting up with my technological challenges. I appreciate it. I have two, what I hope will be brief comments. The first thing is, you guys have continued what I perceive to be two significant procedures that I have perceived for a long time to be antithetical to public input. The first one, and you heard some from Paul, is the unavailability of agenda materials. The second one was the failure of the motion by Member Scott earlier today to try to move this meeting to a time that's much more convenient to the members of the public. And whether it's 5 or 6 or whatever it is, 2 to 4 or 2 to 5 is just, unless you are a die-hard infrastructure nerd like some of us, it's just not compatible with participation by the public. The other point I would make is the same one that the chair made not 10 minutes ago, is that for the poor people waiting to speak, it's been a very long meeting. And when I was a member of the task force, I suggested, and I will suggest it to you again, that comments